Tuya was a regular, underachieving loser in high school. He was doing his best to get ready for the national exams so he wouldn't have to work at Mickey D's for the rest of his life. But even though he's doing his best to stay focused and study, his classmates are busy messing around and talking about the recent string of murders in the city. People have said that Petals show up in the area every time a victim is killed, so everyone is starting to think that the Petals might have something to do with the serial killer. But Tuya doesn't care about any of that. A few minutes later, the homeroom teacher comes in and asks everyone to pay attention because he wants to introduce a new student to the class. But when he calls the new student in, she ignores the teacher and the rest of the class and walks right up to Tuya to introduce herself as Hato. Tuya doesn't know why this random girl is paying so much attention to him, but he knows better than to get involved with crazy main character stuff. She looks like a textbook MC, so he gives her a half-hearted answer and goes back to studying. The girl sits down next to Tuya and doesn't talk to him for the rest of the class. But after school is over and Tuya is on his way home, she finds him and jumps onto the railing next to him. Then she does a backflip that is even more pointless than what Leon Kennedy does, and Tuya is understandably confused because he still doesn't know why this random transfer student is so interested in him. But before he can even finish that thought, Hato grabs his face and looks straight into his eyes. Tuya gets scared and pulls away from her, saying he has to go to cram school now before walking away. Hato talks to someone named Newman on her phone as she leaves and says that Newman was right about the look in Tuya's eyes. That one sentence means that Tuya is now officially a part of the story, so he can't do anything about it now. While this is going on, a crazy man in a dark alley in the city is attacking a woman with a butcher's knife and saying he's going to make a good meal out of her. And this alleyway is right around the corner from the cram school that Tuya goes to, so things aren't looking good for him already. Tuya is sitting on a bench outside his cram school right now, looking at his transcripts from his most recent practice test. To be honest, they're not bad. He has a 70% average, but that's not even close to enough to get him into any Asian school. He throws his transcripts away in anger and sits there wishing he had some kind of talent, anything at all, so he doesn't have to be a useless bum for the rest of his life. He really wants to have a talent, but he knows that they don't just fall from the sky, so wishing for one won't get him anything. 2 police officers have also been called to the area near the alley to look into reports of a woman screaming. However, they haven't found anything yet. At that moment, they see a man hunched over in the corner and think he must be really drunk, so one of the officers goes up to him to see if he's okay. But the officer is horrified when he realizes that this man is eating the body parts of the woman from earlier. He seems very proud of himself. The officer knows right away that this guy isn't right in the head, so he pulls out his gun and is ready to shoot him if he moves suddenly. Tuya walks home a little while later and passes the same alleyway. The first thing he sees is the heads of the 2 officers, which are now cut off, and the crazy guy is still standing there laughing. And sure enough, Tuya is now officially part of the plot. Hato suddenly appears, and when she sees the look on Tuya's face, she asks him if he's feeling jealous. She says that when most people see someone else's talent, they feel one of 3 things: awe, fear, or envy. She thinks that someone like Tuya, who has been so desperate to get a talent, must be feeling pretty jealous right now. Tuya still can't believe what's going on and how Hato knew he would be here. But just then, the man sees both Tuya and Hato, and it looks like Hato and Fish have been friends for a long time. He says Hato is the reason he was able to wake up his talent, and he is very thankful to her. But to show how twisted his gratitude is, he says he will honor her by making her his next meal. He then lunges at both Hato and Tuya, but even though he is looking right at them, Hato still manages to grab Tuya and hide behind a pillar before Fish's knife even hits the ground. That little move was apparently all Newman's fault, but Newman tells Hato to take care of it right away. So Hato gives her phone to Tuya and asks him what he would do if he could get the skills of his past lives right away. For someone like Tuya, that sounds like a dream come true, but there's a catch. This blade is the item, and to get the talent, you have to act like a sad emo teen, which isn't exactly ideal. When Fish finally finds them, Hato suddenly cuts her own neck, which brings out her past life talent as a kunoichi. Tuya sees flower petals falling off of her as she does this, but before he can ask about it, Fish attacks her, so Hato has to use her swords to protect herself. Newman talks to Tuya on the phone during the fight and tells him that people who have reincarnated can get back their talents from their past lives. These people are called returners. It's pretty clear that both Fish and Hato can do things that are beyond human, but Tuya still doesn't get what's going on with the petals, so Newman keeps explaining. She says the petals are proof that someone has brought back a skill from their past life. Even the smartest people eventually die, but when they do, they get a new life. Through reincarnation, they can use the skills they had in their old life. But just because someone was good at something in their past life doesn't mean they were a good person. That's how you get people like Fish. People who are good and bad can both awaken their past life talent. However, if you were a talentless bum in your last life, trying to reincarnate will only kill you. That means that if Tuya tries to use that thing, he might die, so Newman asks him if he still wants to wake up a talent. She thinks Tuya will be scared and say no, but she was very wrong about how crazy he can be. Hato is still fighting Fish, and Fish says he's disappointed because her skills haven't lived up to the hype for someone who is supposed to be as good as a legendary swordsman. Hato gets angry at what was said, so she decides to use one of her best moves, the 8-hued corpse slash. At first, it seems like Fish is ready for it because he blocks one of Hato's slashes. But he forgets about the other 7, and a moment later, he is cut to pieces. All that is left of him are his petals, which blow away in the wind. Hato goes back to get her sword after she sees that Fish is down, but then she sees that Tuya is gone. She asks Newman where he went, and Newman tells her that he took one of the reincarnation blades and ran away. Hato is relieved because she was worried that Tuya wouldn't have the guts to do it. This is exactly what she wanted to happen. In Tuya's room, we see him covered in blood after cutting his own neck. He has a vague dream about a strange man with white hair as he passes out. When he wakes up, it's already morning and Hato is in his room with him. He asks her why she's there, but then he sees that his hand is covered in dried blood. That's when Hato tells him that he has successfully become a returner. He did a lot of moaning and groaning in his sleep though, so she asks him why he was doing that. A little while later, Hato and Tuya are sitting on a bench in the park. Tuya tells Hato that he used to have an older brother who was good at everything. Everyone crowded around him because he was a genius with a bright future. Tuya, on the other hand, was completely and painfully average and was left alone. People always compared what he did to Seiya's great performance. His father called him a disappointment because he didn't win a gold medal in a foot race when he was 6 years old. Tuya has been trying hard to live up to Seiya's high standards ever since. But even though Seiya was very talented, he basically rolled a nat 1 on his health stat, so he got sick and died. Tuya's parents blamed him for Seiya's death for some reason, and that got him kicked out of the house. Since then, he has been trying to get back at them by getting a talent of his own to show them they were wrong. Hato now knows why Tuya was so desperate to get a talent. Desperate is an understatement, though. Tuya tried every skill out there and was never good at any of them. Hato says she gets how Tuya feels because she's a lot like him. Tuya is a little confused by what she said, so he's going to ask her what she means, but before he can, Newman sends her a message telling her to come over. They get to Newman's room a few minutes later. You can tell that Newman has never touched grass before, mostly because she can't walk. Tuya knows it's her voice because he heard it on the phone yesterday. Hato asks Newman where everyone else is because it seems so empty here. Newman says that everyone else is out on missions to stop evil returners. After all, that's what they're here for at the Forest of Greats. She says that evil returners will always come back, so it's their job to get rid of them as soon as possible before they hurt people like Fish did yesterday. She wants Tuya to join the fight. Tuya seems very willing to help, even though he just found out he has to kill other people. On his first official mission, he will be with Hato to take down an evil returner named Vlad. Newman, on the other hand, says she doesn't want them to kill him right away. Hato is a little confused about that part because her job is to kill evil returners. But Newman says she wants to learn more about Vlad's talent, so they only need to keep him busy for 10 minutes before they can kill him. She also says that the mission won't start for 2 more days because they still need to test Tuya's returner ability. That night, Tuya goes out to look for a chance to use the ability. While he is walking down the street, he sees a burglar who has just stolen a girl's bag. The girl is now chasing after the thief, so Tuya thinks this is the perfect time. Tuya's talent is called Right Arm of the Thief, and it's a stealing talent. So when the burglar runs past him, Tuya can reach into the girl's bag and take all of her things for her. The thief then runs away, not even realizing that the bag is now empty. When the girl gets to Tuya, she starts yelling at him for not stopping the thief when he had the chance. But Tuya tells her not to worry because he got all of her stuff out of the bag. At first, the girl is grateful for his help, but then she remembers that the bag that was stolen was a Birkin bag, which is worth a lot more than her stuff, so she keeps chasing after the thief. Tuya's ability only works within 70 centimeters, which is a big problem because it doesn't seem to have any combat skills. But if he can somehow get close enough to use it, he can break the laws of physics to steal anything he can get his hands on, no matter what. Also, it's not just things that it works on. In that short amount of time, Tuya can also take the blood out of the thief's veins, which is why he is now lying on the floor. It looks like this power is evil, but as long as Tuya doesn't use it for bad things, everything will be fine. That being said, that guy wasn't a returner, he was just a regular thief. A death sentence for stealing a purse seems a bit harsh. 2 days later, it's time for Hato and Tuya to go into the woods and kill Vlad. Tuya has to stay back because he doesn't know how to fight very well, so Hato takes the lead. The first goal here is just to keep Vlad busy for 10 minutes so Newman can learn more about him. But Vlad's talent lets him make a lot of sharp spikes come up from the ground, which makes it hard for Hato to stay safe while fighting him. Eventually, Vlad stabs Hato in the shoulder. Tuya doesn't want to leave Hato to die in a situation like this, so even though the 10 minutes are almost up, Newman gives up on trying to find out more about Vlad and tells Tuya to get out of there before he gets killed as well. Vlad is about to kill Hato when an arm suddenly reaches through his chest. This surprises him because there should be a stone wall behind him. Tuya used the stone wall as cover to reach into Vlad's body. Vlad thinks he was trying to steal his heart, but since he's still getting used to his power, he misses and steals nothing. Vlad makes fun of Tuya for missing such an obvious chance to win. Now that Vlad knows what Tuya can do, there's no way he can lose to him, so Tuya and Hato are pretty much doomed. But at that moment, a dark aura fills the air, and a loud voice tells Vlad to leave right away. Vlad tries to tell his boss that he was about to kill these kids, but his boss makes it very clear that Vlad needs to leave right away. So, with great reluctance, he runs away, leaving Hato and Tuya alive. Tuya is standing alone by a bridge later on when Vlad suddenly corners him. Vlad tells Tuya to give back what he stole from him that day. At first, Tuya tries to act like he doesn't know what Vlad is talking about, but Vlad says he knows Tuya must have stolen his talent. Tuya's goal when he attacked Vlad was to get his talent back. The fact that Vlad came here alone to try to get it back means that he didn't tell anyone about it, which is great for Tuya because he wants to keep his ability to steal talents a secret. To make sure it stays a secret, he uses his stolen ability to stab Vlad with his own spikes. Tuya is not a hero and doesn't care about saving people. He only cares about getting as many skills as he can, good or bad, so he can be the best at everything and no one can stop him. Newman calls Hato the next morning to wake her up. She's a little confused because it looks like Tuya studied all night, and she didn't think he was the type of person to keep working hard even after he had already discovered a talent. Tuya doesn't respond to Newman's question and instead asks her what she has planned for the day. Newman tells him that she is going to hunt down an evil reincarnator, but before that, she wants him to stop by one more place. Because Hato isn't answering her phone, Newman tells Toya how to get to her house. When Toya gets there, she finds Hato half asleep and half dressed in the middle of her dojo. Newman starts yelling at Hato for being lazy, but Hato says she only slept in because she trained her sword skills all night. Newman still doesn't get why someone would bother training when they already have skills that are way better than anything they could learn on their own. But Hato still likes to practice whenever she can. Today's target is a bad clown named Gacy who goes after young kids and lures them into the woods to kill them. They soon cross into the killer clown's territory, and when he sees them, he attacks them because he was expecting them to come. Hato quickly uses her powers, and Gacy thinks it will be easy because all he has to do is stay away and use his nin. But before he can do anything, Hato has already cut his body in half, so the mission is over. This is technically a success, but Newman is mad that Hato killed the clown so easily. This was supposed to be a chance for Tuya to get some combat experience. She says she's sorry for jumping in so quickly, but she thought the clown was an easy target and couldn't help herself. But it seems that Hato and Tuya weren't the only ones after the clown. There was a whole strike team following him. Now that they've seen Hato take the clown down so easily, they decide to follow her too so they can find out what these Petals spreaders are up to. That night, Hato is looking for another evil reincarnator when a bunch of apples fall in front of Gain. A second later, a huge force knocks him to the ground. Gain has a hard time, but he finally breaks free from the gravity field and keeps running away. The Newton reincarnator is very impressed that he was able to do that on his own. The Einstein reincarnator has to stop the guy because he's on the run again. She uses quantum mechanics to teleport right next to Gain and then teleport his arm off his body. Newton thanks Einstein for a job well done when she gets back, but he asks why she didn't just teleport the guy's head off to finish it quickly. But she didn't want to steal his thunder because she said it was the soldier's job to kill targets. At that moment, Gain has a gun to the back of his head and is told to give up. But he uses his other hand to grab a pair of scissors and cuts the soldier's neck and eyes. Gain is sure that should have been enough to kill the soldier, but a moment later, he gets shot in the chest. This is because the soldier is not an ordinary man. He is the undead soldier reincarnator, so he cannot die. Not only that, but they also have Dr. Dreesh, the replicator, who has his clones all around the alleyway, so Gain can't get away. A few moments later, Gain is killed. When the mission is over, they all go back to base, where Newman tells them they did a great job. They give Nightingale the branch they got from Gain, and then she asks if any of them got hurt in battle since she is the angel of healing. Funasaka needs some time to heal because he is still missing some body parts. Nightingale hugs him and starts licking his cheek to help him heal. She also whispers in his ear that she wishes he would take better care of his body because she hates seeing him hurt. Funasaka seems to be having a great time with her, so the others leave them alone. Tuya was busy untangling Newman's wires while the others were on their mission. Hato is surprised that Tuya is willing to do chores like this even though he finally has the talent he was so desperate for. But Tuya says he just enjoys doing little tasks like this, and Newman is thankful for his help because she couldn't find anyone else to help her with it. Newman has told Newton a lot about Tuya, so he's looking forward to meeting him. Normally, they would do a formal introduction, but everyone else is busy with their own things, and Nightingale is still kissing Funasaka, so they have to wait for the introductions. Tuya and Hato are walking home together later that night when Tuya sees that the lights in his flat are on. This is strange because he lives alone, so he and Hato go up to see what's going on. Tuya finds Itsuki, an old friend, sitting in his room after they get inside. Itsuki talks about how Tuya looks the same as he did when they last saw each other, which was a long time ago. Since Itsuki is one of Tuya's friends, Hato decides to introduce herself. Tuya says that Itsuki is actually very good at martial arts, even though he doesn't look like it. He was even called a child prodigy along with Tuya's brother, and now he is the head of a special forces unit in the military. Tuya doesn't think he's a bad person, but he does think he's really annoying because he always talks about how great he is. Tuya asks Itsuki what he's doing there after he calms down. Itsuki says he was worried about Tuya because he heard he had been skipping school a lot lately. But now that he sees Tuya, he thinks he was worried for no reason because he thinks Tuya has just been busy with his new girlfriend. He really didn't believe that Tuya could get such a beautiful girlfriend. Even though Tuya tries to explain that he's wrong, Itsuki thinks he's just embarrassed, so he tells him that he doesn't need to hide things like this from him since they've known each other for so long. Hato is interested, so she asks how long they've known each other. Itsuki pulls out a picture from a few years ago to show her. The picture was of Itsuki, Tuya, and Seiya. Since they spent so much time together back then, Itsuki now thinks of Tuya as his little brother. Tuya and Seiya were always a cute couple to him because Tuya always tried to catch up to Seiya, and Seiya would often slow down a little so he wouldn't leave Tuya behind. He wonders what Seiya would do if he were here to see that his younger brother got a girlfriend. But now that he thinks about it, Seiya never really paid attention to little things like that because he was always too busy. Tuya probably doesn't know what you're talking about when you say the curse of the talented. He doesn't want to take up any more of Tuya's time with his girlfriend, so he says he's leaving now. But Tuya can't stand that Itsuki still thinks he's talentless, so he stops him and says that he finally has a talent of his own. Tuya then uses his powers, and instead of being shocked, Itsuki looks angry because he already knew about the reincarnators and how they work. He's let down to learn that Tuya is just another loser who relies on power he didn't earn. Hato gets angry and tells Itsuki to take that back while holding him at sword point. She says he would never understand what people like her and Tuya had to go through to get these powers. Itsuki, on the other hand, says that sounds like what a useless loser would say. When Itsuki calls her useless, Hato loses it and tries to slash him, but Itsuki is a skilled martial artist and easily avoids her attack, knocking her feet out from under her and pinning her to the ground. He says she's lucky she's Tuya's girlfriend, because if she weren't, he wouldn't have let her off so easily after what she did. Also, Tuya can't be mad about what happened because Hato just tried to kill Itsuki. Tuya admits that using the reincarnator power was a cheap way to get ahead, but he plans to use it to get his own skills so he can beat Seiya one day. Itsuki hears this and leaves without saying much. There were special forces units lying in wait outside, around the corner. The real reason Itsuki came today was to find out if Tuya was really one of the reincarnators. Even though Tuya had confirmed it, he still told the unit to fall back because he didn't want to hurt his friend. Dr. Yashiki is sad to hear that Itsuki doesn't want to catch those two because he really wanted to get some new samples of the reincarnator petals. But Itsuki tells Yashiki that he already has more than enough samples, so no one is allowed to fight here. In the meantime, Hato is sulking in the corner of Tuya's room because she lost her cool and got completely manhandled, even with her talent activated. Tuya finally gets what Hato meant when she said she is a lot like him when he sees how sad she is. She says that before she got her talent, she was just a normal girl who didn't do anything useful. She was so useless that her parents left her at birth. She lived in an orphanage, and kids who live there are pretty mean, so she was bullied all the time, especially because her hair was a different color. Every night she cried herself to sleep, but the staff didn't care enough to do anything, so they all acted like they didn't see her. But one day, a nice man took her in and promised to teach her at his dojo. Hato was glad to finally have a place to call home, but the family had been following the same rules and traditions for a long time. A lot of people didn't want the master to take her in, but he didn't care what they thought and took Hato in anyway. He gave her all the love and attention she could ever want, and Hato wanted to repay him by working hard to master the sword. But no matter how much she trained, she could never get better because she wasn't good at it. She really wanted to get better at something so she could make her father proud. That's when she heard a rumor that a branch of reincarnation could help her do that. She looked everywhere until she finally found one and learned Musashi's sword skills. But she got so excited to show her dad how good she was that she almost killed him. He lived, but he was left crippled and unable to hold a sword again. The dojo was closed, and the family kicked her out for what she had done. Tuya has never heard of a full reincarnator before, so he doesn't know what she's talking about when she says she wants to make things right by becoming one and reopening the dojo for her father. Itsuki and Yashiki are on their way back to base, and Itsuki really wishes he could have skipped that reunion because he didn't mean to say all that stuff back there. But he is really sad that Tuya turned out this way. And to make matters worse, this is exactly what the prophecy they got said would happen, so things will only get worse from here. Tuya asks what a full reincarnator is when they get back to his house. Newman joins in to say that everyone at the Tree of Greats is a full reincarnator, except for Tuya and Hato. The main difference is that Hato and Toya can only use their powers for a certain amount of time, while the other full reincarnators can use their powers all the time and are always in their talented form. You can get to this point by using your skills more and more in battle until you just stay that way, even though that sounds weird. Hato wants that to happen because the only way she can see her father again is if she goes back as Musashi Miyamoto. Tuya calls Hato out to the school later that night because he wants to show her something. First, he tells her to turn off her phone so Newman can't hear them. Then, when he's sure it's safe, he tells her that his talent lets him steal other people's talents. Tuya asks Hato if she's sure she wants to celebrate this because he would go after his friends if he needed to in order to get more talent. Hato says she's impressed because his talent is very useful. But Hato isn't bothered by that because she would do the same thing if she were in Tuya's shoes. She wants Tuya to do his best, but she's also a little mad, so she pushes him against the wall and asks him why he hasn't tried to steal her talent yet. She knows that their relationship wouldn't stop him from doing it if he wanted to, so it must mean that he doesn't think her talent is worth stealing, and she's right. She won't deny that her talent isn't very good right now, but she promises to work on it until Tuya has to admit that it is a great talent and try to steal it from her. Tuya gets what she's saying, so he promises to gather enough skills to compete with her in the future. The two of them are now rivals. As soon as Yashiki and Itsuki get back, they go after the seer they caught. Itsuki doesn't want to admit it, but everything the seer said would happen did happen, even Tuya showing Itsuki his powers with one of those blades. Yashiki has tried to figure out what the blade is made of, but so far they haven't been able to do it. That's why they plan to get the answers they want from the seer, no matter what. The seer thinks the threat of torture is funny. Even though they are a highly trained Black Ops team, especially Itsuki, who is as talented as some of the greatest people in history, they are still no match for what is coming. They are only human and are limited by the laws of physics, unlike the reincarnators. He let them catch him in the first place, so even if they wanted to, they couldn't keep him against his will. However, he does agree to give them some information. First, he tells them that he's going to get up and leave this room without getting hurt. Second, he says that his king is going to bring back the disasters of the past. When he says this, the chains that hold his hands together break, and all the soldiers start shooting at him right away to try to stop him. But when the dust settles, he is still fine. Itsuki then lunges forward and cuts off the seer's arm, making fun of him for saying he could get out of here unharmed. But to Itsuki's surprise, the seer still has his arm attached to his body, as if nothing had happened, so he really was unharmed. The seer then walks away without a care in the world, but this time Itsuki tells his men to leave him alone because it's clear that none of them will be able to stop him without hurting someone. The seer says that was a smart move because it saved the lives of his men, but before he leaves, Itsuki asks him to answer one question. He wants to know if the seer was talking about the head of a Returner alliance when he talked about a king. But the seer says it's not like that at all. Some Returners have banded together, like the Tree of Greats group, but he is just a humble servant of the King of Returners. Back at the Tree of Greats, Newton is telling everyone about how a second Returner almost attacked him while he was doing an extermination. Newman asks if he can tell her more about the Returner's power or what it could do, but Newton isn't sure how to do that. He says it was like a black fog, and when Hato and Tuya hear this, they know it has to be the same guy who messed up their fight with Vlad. Newman and Einstein seem especially upset when they find out who it is. A few moments later, just as Newton is about to ask what's wrong, the man himself shows up on all the base's screens. He greets everyone there with a smile and says how great it is that they have made some new friends, but he is going to have to break up the party. This is their motto. Those with talent must use it for the good of the world. Anyone who doesn't agree with this rule must be killed. But the king thinks that's a dumb rule because talent should be free and you should be able to use it however you want. That's why he is going to get rid of them so he can move forward with his plan. The king then disappears, leaving Newton very confused because he doesn't know what just happened. He asks Newman who that guy was, But she's too busy to answer because what just happened shows that the king is really behind all the bad things that have been happening lately. Einstein is especially upset because she can't believe the king lived, but there's no denying it now. Newman tells everyone that the person they just met was the tyrant King Xiangyu. He is the best fighter ever. He is also one of the people who helped start the Forest of Greats. The Forest of Greats wasn't always as big as it is now, but the others never knew this before now. It used to have only 5 members, including Xiangyu. The leader thought that talent should be used to make the world a better place, which is why the Forest of Greats mission became focused on helping people. But Xiangyu was a tyrannical king who loved to rule over others. He couldn't stand the boredom of helping people, so he killed their leader and betrayed the group. Newman thought it was impossible to live with returners who have evil talents because they always want to destroy things. So, for the good of humanity, they must be killed. Einstein is very angry because she thought she had killed Xiangyu last time. She swears she will kill him for good the next time she sees him, but Newton tells her to calm down because that's a bad idea. But Einstein isn't in the mood to calm down, so she punches him in the face and tells him to shut up because he will never understand her. Newton really hates that Einstein gets angry and starts punching right away. He tells her that he doesn't mean she should just let Xiangyu go. He just means she shouldn't go alone because they have a team of strong returners who are all ready to help her. Newman also says she thinks they can win if they all work together, so they will fight Xiangyu with everything they have and hope to get rid of the evil returners for good. They are about to leave, but Newman calls Funasaka over and gives him a secret message before they do. Newman finds Xiangyu's base a week later, and the whole team is ready to attack without warning. At that moment, Caesar Returner runs up to Hato, and he seems very attached to her, but she doesn't want anything to do with him, so she keeps avoiding him. Caesar keeps trying to get her attention, but while he's still trying to pick her up, Hato is suddenly attacked. She draws her swords and ends up in a stalemate with the swordsman Jubi. Jubi and Hato are actually good friends, so this fight is just a way for them to catch up and see how well they can fight each other to make sure they haven't lost their skills. Then, Jubi goes to Tuya to say hello, and Caesar does the same, but Tuya isn't interested in him at all, so he turns away and talks to Newman and Newton instead. He asks them why there are so many people he doesn't know there, and Newton tells him that the Forest of Greats has members all over the world, but because this battle is so big, Newman called them all back to fight. Tuya is surprised because he never thought he would see so many talented people from history in one place. However, it seems like the people who were called back don't really want to be here. Darwin and others believe that the evil returners are doomed to be destroyed because of their nature. It would have been better to take them out one by one than to have an all-out battle. Bobby Fischer and Schrödinger agree. Tuya doesn't know much about these people, but he can tell that they don't look like they would work well together as a team. But that's fine with him because he doesn't care if he wins or loses. He just wants to steal as many skills as he can while everything is going wrong. Once everyone is calm, Newman tells them the plan. They all have to attack along 3 set paths. Tuya is trying to figure out which path to take to get the most skills, but then Funasaka says he wants to team up with Tuya and Fabre to go down the Earth path. This messes up Tuya's plan because he can't steal any skills without getting caught if he has teammates nearby. He asks Funasaka why he wants to pair up with someone like him of all people, and Funasaka just says that he has been interested in Tuya lately. Tuya can't think of anything to say to get out of this without looking suspicious. As the mission is about to begin, everyone gathers at the front gate. Newman tells everyone to be careful because they will be up against some of the most powerful villains in history. Hato and Jubi are chosen to lead the charge. As Hato passes Tuya, who is clearly still panicking about being paired with someone, she tells him that by the time he gets to the castle doors, she will be much stronger, and he will have to try to steal from her. Jubi and Hato break down the front gate and rush in. Now it's time for the rest of the team to join the fight. The Wright sisters both fly up into the air with one of Newman's satellites so she can start doing her maths. While she does that, the teams get into the compound. Tuya is running with Funasaka, and Funasaka can tell that Tuya is upset about something. He thinks that Tuya must be worried about Hato. It's only natural to think that those two are a couple since they seem to be very close. Tuya is a little surprised by what Funasaka just said, but he makes it clear that there is nothing special going on between him and Hato. But on that note, he has been wondering if Funasaka and Nightingale are doing something together, because things get really weird when they are together. But before Funasaka can even answer, Tuya knows he made a big mistake and quickly takes back what he said. So far, he has been very careful not to get involved in the personal lives of any of the Forest of Greats members because he doesn't want to get too close to them and then hesitate when the time comes to steal their talent. But he almost messed up just now. A huge hand reaches out of the woods and tries to grab Tuya a moment later, but Funasaka pulls him to safety just in time. But even though they are safe for now, they will still have to fight that group, and the Strangler looks like he will be hard to deal with. Newman isn't too worried about the other returners because they seem to be having the same problems. She knows they can all handle it. Schrödinger is up against the Wild Bill returner, a sharpshooter from the Wild West. He can easily shoot Schrödinger in the head to kill him. But a moment later, Schrödinger is right behind him, and Bill doesn't know what's going on because he knows he shot Schrödinger a moment ago. Schrödinger also confirms it, but because of his powers, he was able to move to another universe where he wasn't shot in the head, so he did. He can change the odds of any outcome because of his power. For instance, even though he's not very good at aiming with a gun, he can choose a reality where he gets a perfect headshot by chance, and in that reality, he can never miss. Darwin, on the other hand, is up against the Red Ripper, a returner whose claws can cut through anything. But the Ripper isn't the only one with claws. Darwin can change any trait or feature he needs to win a fight, so it won't be hard for him to beat the Ripper. Bobby Fischer and the others are also not having a hard time, but Hato is getting angry because Jubi keeps taking all the strong opponents before she can fight them. Tuya and Funisaka, on the other hand, aren't having as much fun as the others because the Strangler is too strong for them to beat on their own. At that moment, Funisaka tells Tuya to keep going and leave him behind. This surprises Tuya a lot, but Funisaka says that the only thing that matters is that they win the battle overall. He then pulls out his gun and starts shooting at the henchman. After that, he throws a grenade at the Strangler. The grenade doesn't do much, though, because the Strangler takes the blast and goes straight for Funisaka. Tuya jumps in at the last second to save him, and he's about to use his power, but the Strangler dies right then and there. Tuya doesn't get what just happened, so Funisaka tells him that Fabre, the returner with the ability to hide, did it. He was able to block all perception of his movements, which let him give the Strangler a deadly dose of poison to kill him. The second Tuya hears that, he starts to think about how great it would be to steal that talent for himself. But he needs to find a way to catch the talent holder off guard. At the same time, Funisaka calls Newman and asks if she's sure she wants him to keep an eye on Tuya. So far, Tuya seems pretty trustworthy to him, but Newman has been suspicious of him for a while now because he seems too interested in other people's talents, and has been turning off his phone a lot to hide from her surveillance. She thinks he might be working for Xiangyu. In the clock tower, a sniper who works for Xiangyu is getting ready to kill the Wright brothers and bring down Newman's satellite. But Newman had already thought ahead and sent her own sniper to a different location to kill Xiangyu's sniper. But she didn't know that Xiangyu had already set up a second sniper in a different place. The twins get shot in the head, and Newman watches in horror as two of her friends die in a horrible way. The situation is only getting worse because Xiangyu still has his 5 generals waiting to destroy the Forest of Greats. On the other hand, Funisaka realizes that he has just lost touch with Newman and that 2 attackers are trying to take him down while he is distracted. Tuya, on the other hand, steps in and uses Vlad's power to stop them. Funisaka, on the other hand, knows that this power belongs to one of the evil returners, which makes him think that Tuya is a spy. Tuya gets scared and tells Funisaka that he isn't an enemy working for the evil reincarnators. To his surprise, Funisaka believes him and puts down his gun. Tuya is happy, but he doesn't get why Funisaka would believe him. Funisaka just says that he isn't as analytical as Newman. Tuya may look very suspicious to him right now, and he may have kept a part of his talent hidden, but he also showed his talent while trying to save him, and he doesn't want to ignore that act of kindness, so he is choosing to trust Tuya. That being said, he asks him to explain so that he can get the whole story. Tuya tells Funisaka everything a little while later, and Funisaka seems to get it pretty well. Tuya is gathering talents in order to beat his brother Seiya, and he can see why Tuya would want to keep something like that a secret because Newman would go crazy if she found out. Funisaka then looks at Tuya and tells him that he supports his goal of collecting talents. This surprises Tuya a lot. Funisaka then says that he won't give up his talent to Tuya, but other than that, he doesn't care too much because he likes Tuya. Tuya still doesn't understand why Funisaka is being so nice, but Funisaka tells him they should keep going for now. Funisaka knows that people are contradictory by nature. Even though Tuya may not have known this about himself, he is just as soft-hearted as he is greedy for talent. He didn't mind showing off his skills to save himself, or explain what was going on when asked. Tuya is still a human, and that contradictory nature proves it. He can't be a spy. Tuya stops and asks Funisaka if there was a reason he chose to become a returner. There probably was. Funisaka, on the other hand, says he's sorry and tells him he wouldn't know what that reason was because he doesn't remember being human. Over with Newman, on the other hand. As soon as the Wright brothers died, the others rushed to protect Newman. If she falls, the Forest of Greats will be lost. One person makes a lot of clones and stands in front of Newman to make a human shield, but he is quickly shot down by heavy gunfire. Hi-Ho realizes that there must be another sniper at work here and that she needs to take them out before they get Newman. Tuya and Funisaka finally reach one of the castle gates at the same time, but just as they are about to go through, one of the evil reincarnators blows it up. Tuya is fine because he hid behind some rubble, but Funasaka did get hurt. It doesn't matter though, because he's immortal. The enemy then says that Funasaka took too long to get there, and Funasaka tells Tuya that he can sit this one out because he knows that guy only wants to fight him. After all, he is Rudel the Phoenix. Meanwhile, Haya has finally found the enemy sniper, so she uses her power to pull him into her white-held duel grounds. She is sure that getting rid of this guy will be easy. But when she tries to aim at him, she can't see him anymore. A moment later, the man grabs the barrel of her sniper. He then casually gives her a few tips, saying that her barrel is way too long because it makes her vulnerable in close-quarters fights. But Haya had never worried about that because no sniper would ever want to get into a close-quarters fight on purpose. At that moment, she realizes that this man must be the famous sniper Hathcock. Even though Hathcock could end the fight right then and there, he offers Haya another chance. He says he will move 2,000 more feet away so they can have a real sniper duel. Haya calls out to him before he leaves and asks why he is working with the evil reincarnators when he is a legendary hero. Hathcock says she will understand after they finish their duel. Tuya asks Funasaka why Rudo would work with the evil reincarnators when he is supposed to be the famous Luftwaffe pilot. According to history, Rudo was not evil. At that moment, Rudo shoots Funasaka in the face, blowing off part of his face. Funasaka then fires back and hits Rudo in the face. But Rudo's power, like Funasaka's, makes him immortal, and that's not all he can do. Rudo then drops a lot of bombs on Funasaka, which blows him to pieces, but he comes back to life right away so he can keep fighting. Rudo is interested in how Funasaka's version of immortality works by self-regeneration, but Funasaka pulls out all of his guns instead, and Rudo does the same. Tuya is hiding right now so he doesn't get caught in the crossfire. In theory, they should be evenly matched since they are both immortal. But the biggest problem is that the two sides have different levels of firepower. Funasaka only has guns and grenades, but Rudo has a much more powerful machine gun and bomb rain, which is stopping Funasaka from making any progress. Fabre is the only person who might be able to change things in a situation like this, but right now he's lost in the woods because the navigators aren't working. At that moment, he sees two evil returners sitting in the middle of the forest. He thinks he might as well kill them since they can't fight back against someone they can't see. But to his surprise, the big guy runs straight at him, and he doesn't get why this is happening because he should be completely hidden. Hitler is the person in the chair, and he has the mastermind ability, which is why he has already figured out what all the members of the Forest of Greats can do. And as for how he knows where Fabre is, his ability hides all sounds and smells coming from Fabre's body. But because this forest is full of decay from Pole's ability, the lack of smell in Fabre's location gives him away. Pole then squishes him into the ground, taking away Fabre's main advantage. Funasaka and Rudo are still fighting, but neither of them is making much progress because they are both immortal. Funasaka falls back and joins up with Tuya again. He tells Tuya that he can't do anything here because Rudo is better at attacking than he is, but Tuya can tell that Funasaka is having a good time. Funasaka doesn't say no to this fight because it's fun, but he thinks they can't win right now. Tuya asks if it's going to be a tie, but Funasaka tells him that even with something like immortality, a returner can only use their powers so much. Since Funasaka is taking most of the damage in this fight, it's only a matter of time before he reaches his limit. While this is going on, Haya is still fighting Hathcock in her own area. She's happy to finally have a real challenge, but then she sees Hathcock come out from behind cover with both arms raised. She can't believe what she's seeing because she never thought someone as good as Hathcock would give up so quickly. But Hathcock never meant to give up in the first place. He was just walking forward to get Haya within the range of his one domain. When he got close enough, the area changed from snowy tundra to a snow-covered jungle, and that's when the real fun battle began for both of them. In the meantime, Newton and Einstein are walking together in the forest. Einstein is very scared because she can't use her teleportation power here. She hears a noise coming from the bushes nearby, so she holds on to Newton for dear life. But when she looks again, she sees that it's just Darwin. Darwin falls into a puddle of goo right in front of her eyes, just as she is about to yell at him for scaring her like that. Einstein is about to scream in fear, but Newton covers her mouth. If there is someone in the woods strong enough to kill Darwin, they are probably still close by. Newton was right about that because Hitler and Poe are right around the corner. Hitler thinks Darwin was a little full of himself when he called his ability evolution, since all it did was give him the traits of animals that already existed, making him not very hard to beat. Aside from that, Hitler wants to know how long Schrödinger plans to stay behind that tree. Schrödinger has been here for a while, but he hasn't done anything yet because every option he can think of has a 0% chance of working, so there's nothing he can do. He finally gives up trying to use his power and just goes for it, aiming his gun at Hitler, But that doesn't work because Pol quickly squishes and rots him into goo. A sword is thrown at Pol right after that, but he catches it and rots it too. Bobby Fischer gave him the sword, and he's a little sad that his surprise attack on Pol didn't work because he wanted to kill him as soon as possible. Hitler knows all about Fischer and how he can call chess piece warriors, but Fischer is surprised when Hitler says this because he doesn't understand how Hitler could know about his skill. And even worse, Hitler knows what each and every piece does, so he can easily counter every move Fischer makes and destroy them. Hitler says that Fischer would have won if this were a real chess match, but in the real world, the strength of your piece is just as important as your strategy. Pol, on the other hand, is much stronger than anything Fischer can make. Einstein is really starting to panic now that Pol has killed Fischer. She can't think of a single way she could beat Hitler, especially since he just killed 3 strong returners and seems to know everything about them. Newton can tell that Einstein isn't thinking clearly right now, and since they have seen what Hitler has done so far, he knows that he must know they are already there. So he steps outside and tells Einstein that he will take care of all the fighting for her. As soon as Pol sees Newton, he punches the ground, sending a wave of rot straight at him. Newton jumps into a tree to avoid being dissolved, and even though he said he would handle all the fighting, he can't think of a way to beat this guy right now. At that moment, Pol somehow finds out where Newton is hiding and knocks down the tree, forcing Newton to run away. He doesn't get how Pol found him so quickly, since that was a great hiding spot. But Hitler tells him that there's no point in hiding because his mastermind ability is an all-knowing talent. That's why he knows that Einstein is hiding behind that tree over there, and that her ability is translocation, which lets her move regions of space with herself inside to teleport. But she can't use her power right now because she hasn't teleported away yet. This is because she can only teleport to places she has been to on foot. Hitler's accurate description of her talent makes Einstein shiver, and Newton can tell that she is scared right now. But then he sees a small weasel on the ground and picks it up. When he does, he sees a symbol on its stomach that tells him the truth about Hitler's talent. With this information, he is able to catch Pol off guard just as he is about to grab Einstein. This gets Hitler's attention because there is no way Newton just attacked from Pol's blind spot, so he must have figured out how this technique works. Newton figured out that the symbol he saw on the bottom of the weasel let Hitler share his senses with it. He put these symbols all over the forest so he could keep track of all the returners he had killed and learn about their powers. As for how he knew Einstein's power even though she never used it in the forest, Xiang Yu probably told Hitler all about it since he knew Einstein when he was part of the Forest of Greats. Hitler is amazed that Newton figured out the truth about his power so quickly, and he tells Newton how talented he is. But just because he figured out the trick doesn't mean their situation has changed. They can't get rid of all the marks that Hitler has left in the forest, so they can either run away or die fighting Pol. But Newton still has one more trick up his sleeve. Hitler doesn't know what it does and hasn't come up with a way to stop it yet because he hasn't used it at all since he got into the forest. As long as he can find an opening to attack, he still has a chance. Rudel and Funisaka are still fighting, and Funisaka has figured out how to make up for the difference in firepower by throwing Rudel's bombs back at him. However, his regeneration is starting to slow down after all the damage he has taken. That being said, Rudel is also starting to get tired, so it won't be long before one of them loses power first. Even though they are both in danger of dying, they are both having the time of their lives because this is the most fun they've had in a long time. The first thing Funisaka remembers is waking up as a returner. He knew right away that a talent had been awakened in him, but all of his memories became fuzzy and blurred as a result. But he told himself that was a small price to pay for such power. Not long after that, he was inducted into the Forest of Greats, when Newman told him that he would work for the sake of humanity. At first, he was overwhelmed with emotion at the thought of having such a grand purpose. Because of this, he was sent to fight on battlefields all over the world. He was able to do things that no one else could do because of his talent. But after a while, he got bored because winning battles like these was too easy for him. He started to wonder if giving up his memories was worth it for a boring life like this. Back to the present, Funisaka's arm has just been blown off, and his regeneration is much slower than it used to be. Tuya runs out in front of him to try to protect him, but Rudel tells him to stay out of it. But for some reason, Rudel doesn't shoot at Tuya at all, and Tuya thinks there is more to it than Rudel just wanting to keep the duel between him and Funisaka. Tuya thinks they can use the fact that he was told not to attack him to win, so he tells Funisaka that they still have a chance to win. Funisaka is still a little confused and doesn't get what Tuya is saying, but Tuya tells him that it means he doesn't have to fight to the death anymore. He is sure that Funisaka still has something to live for, so he tells him not to give up on living. But now that Funisaka has heard this, he knows what his real purpose is, and it's not to stay alive. He stands up and thanks Tuya for his concern, but he tells him that he doesn't need to help him anymore. He walks over to Rudel and thanks him for the chance because he finally understands what he has been missing all along. He was never meant to be one of the greats, and he never cared about helping people. All he wanted to do was fight because that's what he was made to do. The same goes for Rudel. That's exactly why Rudel decided to fight the Forest of Greats in the first place. He knew he would get to fight someone like Funasaka. They only get a talent, and that's not enough to make someone great. Most returners are just pretending to be who they used to be and are doing it to make up for memories they have lost. Funasaka wants to know if Rudel knows what returners really are, but he's not sure. He only knows for sure that they are no longer human. The people they used to be cut their own throats in exchange for power and lost everything else in the process. They will never know what their old selves wanted to do. Tuya, on the other hand, is different because he still has his memories and his original name. Xianyu told Rudel to let anyone who still has their original name pass, and he even named Tuya specifically, though Rudel doesn't know why. The only thing he knows for sure is that Tuya is still human, which means he has a future beyond his talent. Xianyu is watching over the battlefield with his power, and he just saw the end of the fight between Hathcock and Haiha. Hathcock died, but he also killed Haiha, so they no longer have a sniper. Hato, Jibi, and Caesar just got to the main part of the fort, but it looks like no one is here. Hato can't believe this because she was really looking forward to fighting some strong opponents here. She goes to look around to see if she can find anyone. Caesar says he will go with her to be safe, but Jubai hits him on the head and tells him that won't be necessary because Hato is strong enough to take care of herself. Caesar knows that, but he's surprised to hear Jubai call Hato strong because he didn't think she would see someone like her as a rival. Jubai says that even a blind woman could see how strong Hato is, so it shouldn't be a surprise that she agrees with him. Caesar then asks her who she thinks is stronger, her or Hato. Jubai says that if she and Hato fought, she might have a hard time, but in the end, she would win. That being said, she says that if a fight between her and Hato went on for a long time, she might not be able to win. Hato hasn't forgotten her original name yet, so she is still an incomplete returner. This means that she still has untapped potential. Caesar says he likes Hato's original name better than her talent name, but Jubai thinks the original name is useless, and that Hato should get rid of it as soon as possible. Aside from that, she thinks it's strange that this place was supposed to be a fort because it looks more like a coliseum. That's when Caesar throws his dice on the ground to activate his power, which brings a sword and stabs Jubai in the back. As he does this, he tells her that the coliseum design is perfect for killing. Tuya's side, before Funasaka and Rudel start fighting again, Funasaka asks Rudel if he can tell him something first. Their information says that Xiangyu has 5 generals, and Newman thought that Tuya might be a spy, but that isn't true, so he wants to know who the spy was. Rudel says that there was a spy in the Forest of Greats, and it was Caesar, the most powerful general and hero of Rome. The second Hato sees Jubai's body lying on the ground, dead. She is furious and wants to know why he would do something like that. Caesar really thought it would be more fun if he was the one who betrayed this time, but it makes him feel bad. Hato runs at Caesar and tries to cut him down while he's not paying attention, but he easily stops her and throws her away. Hato doesn't get how he could beat her in close combat with a sword that long, but Caesar tells her that the length of his sword doesn't get in the way of him at all. Caesar is from the West and is used to the half-sword technique, which is different from samurai. In this technique, he grabs the sword and moves it around to make close-quarters combat easier. Hato tries her best to take his weapon away from him, but he is too good with it, so he ends up hitting her against a wall. He says that there are many ways for him to fight with a long sword, but he doesn't need to do all of them because he has other options. Then he uses his power to call forth even more weapons, each of which has a unique quality that Hato can handle. At one point, he even breaks her sword in half. Then he knocks Hato to the ground and pulls out an executioner's sword that is strong enough to break through a large part of the Colosseum. He didn't hit Hato though, because he was just trying to show her how strong he was. He can use any weapon with perfect skill, but this isn't even his best skill. He is mostly a strategist, so this is more of a side talent that he just happens to have. Hato can't believe that someone as powerful as Caesar would betray them, but Caesar says he was never on their side in the first place. He was there before the Forest of Greats was built, and he has his own goals to reach out. He also remembers that Hato's goal was to get stronger by fighting strong opponents, so he tells her to step up her game, or she'll end up like Jubai. But Hato is furious that Caesar is treating Jubai's body so badly. As her anger grows, so does her power. Caesar is surprised, but he is excited to see what an incomplete returner can do. Newton and Einstein are still fighting Hitler and Pole, but there's not much they can do here, so they've just been running away and making fun of Pole every now and then. The plan is for them to get close enough to Pole to attack him with Newton's power, but they also need to make sure they can get out of Pole's 6-meter decay range. They already know that Hitler is too smart for them to fool, but Pol seems like someone who acts on impulse. Newton thought that if they could make Pol lose his cool by insulting him, that would mess up his teamwork with Hitler and make him easier to attack. Einstein didn't think the plan would work at the time, but it seems to be working now because Pol hasn't been following any of Hitler's orders for a while. Then, against Hitler's orders, Pol throws a decay attack at Newton. Newton thinks this is the perfect time to counterattack because he's already outside Pol's 6-meter range, but at that moment, Hitler starts laughing because Newton fell for his trap. Newton throws Ein to the side to save her from decaying when he realizes he has been tricked. Then, just before the decay wave hits him, he bends the space around himself with his gravity field so that it doesn't hit him. Hitler is impressed that Newton was able to think quickly enough to find a way to survive that attack, but now he has nowhere to go. Hitler tells him that Pol's real attack range is more than 50 meters. So, limiting his attacks to 6 meters before and having Pol act like he had lost control were all part of Hitler's plan. Newton says he's sorry to Einstein and tells her this is the end of the queue for him. She should leave while she still can, but Einstein can't stand the thought of leaving Newton behind, so she teleports in front of him. Hitler is surprised to see this because he didn't expect one of the so self-important greats to try to save another even though it's hopeless. Newton also tells her that this isn't a good idea because it will only get her killed, but Einstein knows the risk and wouldn't be able to live with herself if she just left him. Pol grabs Ein by the shoulder at that moment, which is usually when he kills her, but this time he just throws Einstein at Newton. Then Hitler says he's willing to call it a draw. Hitler explains that Pol has chosen to let the two of them live, and that he personally has no way to kill them even if he wanted to, so they get to live. The two of them are speechless because they don't understand what he means. Newton asks him if he's sure he wants to do that, since they'll definitely come after him again in the future if he lets them go. Hitler says that doesn't matter because he plans to die today anyway. He knew that this battle would end with the death of all the evil returners, so he just wanted to kill as many of Newman's returners as he could. Hitler doesn't want to kill them either because they aren't delusional about their talent and chose to protect each other, which shows that they still have a human side. He tells them to value their humanity. After that, Pol uses his power on both himself and Hitler. As they are falling apart, Hitler tells Newton and Einstein that he has one piece of advice for them: don't believe everything Newman says. Newton and Einstein go back to base camp after Hitler and Pol leave. There, they find that Newman and Nightingale are the only ones left. Because Newton and Einstein are hurt, Newman tells Nightingale to go heal them. While Newton is being healed, he starts to ask Newman questions about the whole operation. It's hard to believe that Xiang Yu's group exists to cause chaos in the world like Newman said, because if that were really his goal, he could have done a lot more by splitting up his troops and sending them to different parts of the world instead of bringing them all here for a fight. Newman refuses to answer their questions and instead tells them that they are being brainwashed by the enemy, but Newton isn't falling for it. He tells her that she should start telling the truth, or else he will have to make her do it. But before he can do anything, Nightingale uses her second power, and Newton stops talking all of a sudden. Newman then tells Newton that it's not very nice to threaten her like that. To Einstein's surprise, Newton completely changes his mind and agrees with Newman now. Einstein doesn't get it because she and Newton talk about what they would do if Newman didn't tell them the truth before they got back. But now Newton is acting completely differently. She quickly figures out that Nightingale and Newman did this to Newton, so she yells at them to stop, but then Newton hits Aang with a gravity blast. Back on Tuya's side, the fight between Funisaka and Rudel has just ended. Funisaka won, but he won't last much longer. He doesn't feel bad about it because it was the most fun he's had in a long time, but he asks Tuya to take his talent as his last wish. Tuya says he can't do that because he doesn't want to steal from Funisaka now that they are friends, even though he said he would do anything to get talent. Funisaka, on the other hand, says he wants to give it to Tuya anyway because he thinks he deserves it more than anyone else he knows. Besides, Funisaka is going to die soon, so he would much rather have someone like Tuya put his talent to good use, and hearing that, Tuya reluctantly grants Funisaka's wish by stealing his talent. Tuya then goes on to the fortress, where he is surprised to find a castle surrounded by the graves of all the great people who have died. Tuya sees Xiang Yu inside. Tuya is about to attack Xiang, so he uses his power, and Xiang is willing to indulge him for a little, so he gets down from his throne and gets ready for the battle. He throws a punch at Tuya, but Tuya dodges out of the way, and tries to hit him with some spikes, but it turns out it was just a clone. Then Xiang takes over the rubble and throws a bunch of rocks at Tuya, hitting him right in the head. His companion asks Xiang if he is sure that is okay, since she thought he was trying to take Tuya alive. Xiang is sure that there is no way Tuya would die from something like that. At that moment, Tuya throws a strike through the rocks and hits Xiang in the arm. Tuya had used his thief ability to steal some of the center of the rock and hit in the hole to avoid being hit. Xiang is impressed at how fast Tuya was able to come up with a solution but tells him it's useless because his ability allows him to take control of anything around him and uses the power to take control of Tuya's spikes, turning the tables on him altogether, and before Tuya knows it he's been impaled through his heart. He falls to his knees in pain, but Xiang tells him to stop whining and get better already, since he knows Tuya has the immortality ability now. Tuya is a little surprised that Xiang isn't trying to finish him off, and even more confused that Xiang is just patiently waiting there for him to heal himself. Xiang says that immortality is taking too long to heal Tuya's body. So it seems that while Tuya may be able to steal talents from others, the talents he gets are inferior versions. Xiang thinks that's ironic, because it reminds him a lot of Seiya. Tuya is surprised when he hears Xiang mention Seiya's name, and asks him how he knows his brother. Xiang explains that Seiya was one of the founding members of the Forest of Greats with him, so they were pretty close. Tuya asks if that means Seiya was a returner, and Xiang confirms that, but also points out that Tuya doesn't actually know who Seiya was. Xiang only knows about him through the few memories they shared in his childhood, and the rumors he heard about him from others, so if Tuya really wants to learn about who Seiya was, Xiang is willing to help him. Tuya doesn't know what Xiang is talking about, but in the next moment Xiang stabs him through the stomach, saying that he's going to show Tuya everything he needs to know about Seiya. Tuya starts seeing visions of Seiya and the original members of the Tower of Greats, and Seiya had the returning ability of Leonardo da Vinci, Universal Vessel, making him capable of learning almost any other talent since Da Vinci was known as a multi-talented genius, and as such, Newman was certain that one day Seiya would surpass all of them in strength, making himself the greatest returner of all time or an outright god, an outcome she was greatly in favor of. All the returners were extremely talented, but none of them had any real goals at the time, so they were just living their lives in boredom. A little while later Seiya asks Xiang to teleport him back home, which Xiang wasn't exactly thrilled about since every time he uses his ability he has to cause physical harm to someone. Thus, he had to scratch Seiya's cheek to meet the conditions, but just as he was about to leave, Seiya asked him if he would like to stay and look around. Xiang refuses at first, saying he has no interest in the matters of ordinary people and besides, he doesn't want people to notice his petals. Seiya tells him not to worry about that though, he learned a trick from Houdini, to hide the petals so nobody should notice. Thus Xiang decides to stay after all. A few moments later, one of Seiya's friends, Kitazuka, comes over for Seiya's usual practice that day. He introduces Xiang to Kitazuka, who finds him interesting, but he doesn't have time to talk, as he's eager to start practice. While Xiang was sparring with Seiya, he was observing from the sidelines, and standing there he saw a young Tuya, hiding in the bushes nearby. He lifts him up and asks what he's doing here, but Tuya turns it around and accuses Xiang of being a trespasser. Xiang says he is not a trespasser, he came here with Seiya's permission. Little Tuya says he just came to watch Seiya practice, because he wants to be just like Seiya in the future. Xiang tells him that if he's trying to become like Seiya then he shouldn't bother because no one can live up to someone like him. Tuya takes this as Xiang calling him useless, so he yells at him and runs off. Xiang didn't mean it that way, but he doesn't know how to tell Tuya that his brother isn't human anymore, so he decides to just let it go. A little while later, Seiya is back at Xiang's hideout, and they've been training for a while now, but while Seiya still wants to keep going, Xiang throws a towel on his head and tells him to take a break. While they rest, Xiang asks Seiya why he trains so hard all the time. He wants to know if he has some sort of goal he is working towards, because if it's something like taking over the world then Xiang wants in on the plan since that's what his ability is best for. Seiya laughs out loud and Xiang shouts at him for not being respectful, but Seiya says he was caught off guard because he wasn't expecting him to say something like that. Xiang wants to know what motivates Seiya, so he says he has a little brother who idolizes him and Seiya has been feeling guilty about it because all the talent he has looked up to was pretty much given to him by the Petals without him having to do anything. And that's why he wants to work as hard as he can to gain new talents so he can try to make the world a better place at least. Then maybe one day he would have the guts to face Tuya and tell Tuya the whole truth. Xiang is a little disappointed that Seiya's goal is so boring, but asks what kind of good Seiya is trying to accomplish, and Seiya thinks for a moment before responding with world peace, and Xiang thinks that is a hilariously ambitious goal, but he's willing to help him out, and he manages to get the others on board with the idea as well. But Newman doesn't really want to participate because she says she doesn't like wasting energy on tasks with no real solution. If it were world domination it would be more feasible, as all she need to do is kill off anyone who resists. Something like world peace is hard to quantify, as things like famine, discrimination, and war can't just be fixed by force, and there are countless examples of those problems in the world, so even with Newman's super intelligence she has no idea where to start. Xiang cuts her off and asks if she is just scared that she isn't capable of such a feat, because if so she doesn't have to push herself, but that comes from him, and that is the worst insult Newman has ever suffered, so purely out of pride she will join the mission just to prove a point. Xiang says to Seiya that since the whole idea was his, he should decide their first move. With all of them working together, there should be nothing they can't accomplish. That was how the Forest of Greats was founded. Then Xiang went out to find other returners and finally found a group of returners including Hitler and the other sinners. He told them all about the goal of world peace that he and the others are working towards. But Hitler takes it the wrong way and thinks that Xiang must be there because he wants to take them out for the sake of his world peace. After all, they all have a reputation for causing trouble. Darwin tried to explain to everyone that Xiang is only trying to help, but the other tensions are already high and the others seem convinced that this is going to be an all-out fight. Without warning, Xiang hits Hitler and Darwin hard on the head and tells them to cut it out. He explains that the Forest of Greats is a symbol for returners who want to do great things, so it doesn't matter who they are or what their talent is, he is willing to accept them no matter what. Hitler is surprised to hear him say that, but he reminds Xiang that some returners are greatly influenced by their talents, so they may be led to commit crimes if their talent's history is bad. But Xiang was already aware of that, and promises to deal with any rogue returners personally. A little while later Xiang returns to the new Forest of Greats base and is surprised to see a bunch of new faces, but Seiya explains that they are all greats that Newman convinced to join the cause, and Xiang is glad to see all the support they are getting, but there's something he wanted to talk to Seiya about. He asked Seiya if he would be willing to accept returners even if they don't have great pasts, so to speak, and he was a little nervous about how Seiya would respond to the question, but to his relief, Seiya said he'd be happy to accept anyone who wants to join the cause. That's how the Forest of Greats was born. And the only reason it was so successful was because Seiya was there to keep them all together, great and sinner class returners alike. But that all changed one day when Seiya and the others called an emergency meeting, and when Xiang arrived he saw that Seiya didn't look so good. Seiya told him that he had decided what the first goal of the Forest of Greats was, and he said he planned to eradicate all sinner class returners. But Xiang really didn't take that well and flared up in anger because this wasn't part of the deal. The others explained that Tuya had been recently attacked, and from Newman's analysis she deduced it was the work of a sinner. Xiang understands that Seiya would be upset, but Xiang tells him there are plenty of sinner-class returners who are perfectly harmless. But according to Newman's calculations, the possibility of the sinners doing these kinds of things again is very high, and ordinary people have no way to defend themselves, says Seiya. Xiang, if that's really how you feel, then kill me first. Xiang drops to his knees. Xiang, kill me, Seiya. This makes Seiya hesitate when he hears him say that, but that just makes Xiang more angry as it shows Seiya has no real conviction. If he is so sure that all sinner-class returners need to be wiped out, then the fact that they are friends shouldn't matter to him. Xiang tells Seiya that he has plenty of friends who are sinners and he isn't going to just stand by and watch them be killed, so this means war. As he says that, he drives his fist through Seiya's chest. The others look at what Xiang has done with wide eyes, especially Einstein, who immediately tries to take him out, but Xiang manages to avoid a fatal hit, and in that moment he notices that Newman has a sinister smile on her face, almost like she planned this whole thing. The group is about to attack Xiang again to take him out, but Seiya teleports Xiang away before they could. Xiang doesn't get it. Why would Seiya save his life after all he said? And that's when Seiya apologizes, telling Xiang he was right, extermination is a bad idea. Now Xiang understands that Seiya was not in his right mind when he said all that stuff, and it all makes sense because Seiya's whole reason for doing this was to make Tuya proud of him, so seeing Tuya hurt probably clouded his judgment. It would have been nice to know that before things escalated, but it's too late now because Seiya is already dead. Back in the present, Tuya has just seen the full story, and thanks Xiang for showing him, because it puts his mind at ease to know that his brother was a returner and not some unfathomable genius. Xiang is a little surprised that Tuya has nothing else to say after learning the truth, but there's something else he wanted to tell him. He tells Tuya he has to stop Newman. She is up to something, for sure. She might have bought into the world peace plan back then, but that was likely a cover for her true motive, and that's probably why she wanted to get rid of all the sinners in the first place, to remove any potential obstacles for her plan. Then Caesar walks into the hall with Jubi on his shoulders and he asks Xiang to make sure she doesn't die for him because Hato is after him and she's not the same anymore.